Hi, I'm Susan from Sunrise Quilt Studio. In this video, I'm going to show you the most out of square, loads of fullness quilt top that I have ever seen. This top has so much fullness in it that I wasn't sure what to do with it. This is a vintage top that I picked up at an antique store. And I was working on this top about the same time I started working on the strawberry basket quilt, and I set it aside because it was more than what I could handle at the moment. In this video, I'm going to show you how I started working on this quilt, then realized the problems it had. I'm going to show you step by step what I did, all the things that I tried to work with this quilt top the way it was, and then I'm going to show you what I did at the end to save this top, because I really wanted to save the top. But it was one of those I didn't think at one point that there was going to be any way to save it. Well, I figured out how to do it, and I'm going to show you how I went through that process, all the things I tried, and what my final decision was on how to work with this top. So hopefully this will give you some ideas of things that you can do if you come across a top that is just that has just too much fullness in it, that is out of square, and is a lot more work than what you're bargaining for. If this had been a customer quilt, I would have rejected it. I just showed the customer where the problem was, given her suggestions on how to fix it, but I would not have tried to quilt it. And that's what I'm doing with this quilt top with myself. It's my top, and there wasn't any way I was going to quilt it the way it was. So I've given it back to myself, the customer. I'm fixing this top, and then I'm going to quilt it. So I want to show you all of the processes that I went through on this quilt top. I hope you enjoy it. It's a little bit crazy, but we come across crazy quilts sometimes. I wanted to see if I could show you some of the fullness in this quilt. I have it hung up on my design wall, and I've got the top of it pinned up as straight as I can get it, and then I have the sides, start pulling the sides out, and I'm going to release my camera from the stand so I can move a little bit better. So here is the top that you can see up under my light up there. I've got that pretty straight, and then as we come down, you can see where I've started pulling the sides out to get those blocks straight in, and we're bowing out. You can see it there, and you can see it here next to my clock. And then as we go down, you can see the drapes, how it's draping. Now, I don't know if the person who put this quilt top together, if they mismeasured their borders that much, or if it has been hanging somewhere. Because I have no idea how old this one is. It's got a lot of solid fabrics in it, so it's hard for me to tell. And so anyway, I am not sure I can get all this fullness out without taking the borders off. And here at the bottom, there is no border at all. Well, no, there is. There is one border, a green border. It's the same color as the background fabric. But then it has an orange and a blue narrow border on both sides, and then this top area up here. So what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to press this quilt. These fabrics feel like they've been used. They're really soft and pliable, so I don't think this is new fabric in it. I think this is all fabric that has been probably in clothing or pre-washed. So I don't know that it's going to shrink on me any at all. So I'm going to try it though, and see how much of that fullness I can get out. And if that doesn't work, then I'm going to take the borders off, and then I'll do something else. I'll either leave it the way it is, or I'll put new borders on. I'm not sure what I'm going to do yet. But anyway, this is one of those quilts where, I know some quilters say they can quilt out everything. I'm just not sure I want to work that hard on this quilt. So, I don't know. I'll give it a try, and show you the results. Okay, I just got done measuring the quilt, and wanted to show you the numbers I came up with. This quilt is very out of square. Okay, here's the top of the quilt, and this outer line here is the outer edge of the quilt with the borders on. This is the inside of the quilt. This is just the blocks and the background without the border. These are the borders here. Okay, so what I came up with, I'll start with the outside edge. The top is 70 3/4 inches. The bottom is 67 1/4. So that's not too bad. That's 3 inches. That's 3.5 inches. That's still enough, but it's not too bad. It's something I could deal with. However, the center of the quilt is 74.5 inches from edge to edge. So now we're on 4 inches difference between these two, and 7 inches between here and here. So this quilt is kind of like this. It's not square. It's more like this. it's you know, it's going to be bowed out in the center. So that's a lot of fabric to take in there. Okay, from these edges, right to left, we're only off by 1 inch. That's not too bad. But the center is 82.5 inches long. So we are really long here. That's another 6 inches difference between here and here, 5 inches between here and here. So we've got a lot of fabric in the center of this quilt. Now, if I took the borders off, we are looking at 65 inches at the top, 63.5 at the bottom. The center is 59.5, so it's narrow. So at this point it's bowing in, and for some reason it's bowing out here. I'm not sure what's going on with this. It's just really strange measurements. And then on this side it's 67.5 and 69, so we're not too bad there. But in the center it's 72.5, so we're long this direction, but narrow here. So I haven't decided what to do yet. I may go ahead and put this on the machine and see if I can stabilize it and see how much fabric that I've got extra in the middle. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start at this line here, and I'm going to stabilize this edge and make sure it's straight, make sure these edges are straight, and see if I can work in the fullness here. If I can't do that, then I'm going to take these borders off and see if I can do anything with that. Okay, I have the Cat's Cradle quilt on the machine, and I'm going to see if I can stabilize this and see how much I can square this up before I get started doing the detail quilting. So I want to show you where I'm at this point. Right now I have the backing and the top loaded as well as the batting, but I haven't secured the top to the batting and the backing fabric. So it's just laying here right now, and this top edge is pretty straight. There's not a lot of waving or anything in it, but I think this is the narrowest part of the quilt. So I'm going to secure that top and stitch in the ditch in that first border, and then kind of go from there. I'd like to get this quilt square. I don't know if that's going to be possible, but I'm going to try, and then if not, I'm going to have to take these outer borders off and do something with this quilt top to square it up, because I don't think I'm going to be able to quilt in all this fullness, because there's just so much fullness in this top. But we'll see how it goes. So first I want to show you how this looks just laying on top of the quilting machine. Okay, here it is. It's all laid out, and you can see I've just pulled up a lot of fullness so that I could line it up. What I've done is I've basted a excuse my arm here, I need to see what I'm doing here. I've basted a line of basting stitches here with the long arm using my horizontal channel lock, so I know this line is straight. And what I do is I line up the top edge of the quilt to that stitching line. And when I look at it, if I go down to the end of this machine and I look at this seam looks straight. So I'm not concerned about that. The concern is when I get down to like this next row of blocks, the quilt wants to bow out. It bows out like this. And that's going to be my challenge, is to get this to lie straight. And let me give you a different angle so you can see that a little better. So now if I pull all the extra fullness out of here, this is going to bow out right here. And it starts about this second row. Now if I line this up where it's perpendicular to this top edge, I get a lot of extra fullness in here. So depending on how much fullness I come up with is going to determine what I do with this top. Like I said, this is one I'm just not sure what I'm going to do until I get into it. So wish me luck, and I'll show you how things go. Okay, what I decided to do was to go down the edge of the quilt and pin it so that all of this border here is perpendicular, so it's all straight. And did it on both sides. And this is what I'm coming up with all this fullness. And I just really don't know if I can get that quilted out. That is just so much. I mean, look at this. If I scoot this all to the center, I mean, that's, I just don't know if I can do this. And not only is it just in the center, it's up and down, because there's fullness going this direction, there's fullness going this direction. I just really don't know what to do with this. Okay, I just don't know what to do with this. I've seen other quilters quilt out a lot of fullness, but this, I've not seen anybody do anything like this. I just don't know. I think what I'm going to try to do next is not worry about getting these seams straight, and just pull the fullness, let it go where it wants, you know, stretch the quilt out to see where that fullness wants to go, and see if that will be a possibility. If not, this is one that I'm going to have to take apart in order to quilt it, or just leave it as it is and just not quilt it. So I'm going to show you once again all this fullness I'm coming across. I'm going to release my camera here. So we're going to be moving, but this is all that fullness. It's just, I mean, how do you work this in? And keep these seams straight. Like if I wanted to keep these borders straight, keep everything going, I just don't think I can do it. So I'll try a couple other things and show you what I come up with. Okay, I tried to let the quilt do what it wanted to do, and the top part of the quilt wasn't too bad. But now I'm at the bottom of the quilt, and this is what I've got. This edge is the narrowest edge of the quilt. The top is that I thought was the narrowest edge is not. This is the narrowest edge. So when I get here, you can see there's the bottom of the quilt. I have all of this, and there's just no way to quilt this out. So you can see that the sides are just too short for this quilt. These sides need to be longer here. Right in here, these need to be longer. So what I've decided to do is I'm going to take this quilt apart. I'm going to save the blocks And I'm going to buy some new fabric and put this quilt back together. I'm going to square up these blocks, make sure they are square. And then I'm going to put it together with some new fabric. That's the only way I'm going to be able to quilt this top. I know there are some quilters say I can quilt out anything. I challenge you to quilt this out. How do you quilt? They quilt out this much fabric. I mean, you just can't. And there are quilts like that. This, like, I don't know why this is so out of square. I don't know if it's just the way the quilter put it together. If it, she just misjudged. But I'm thinking maybe this was laying across something for decades, probably. You know, here's some sunspots. This has been setting in the sun. It's been faded. So I think this was folded over something and left to hang, and I think it got itself out of shape. Now I could wet this quilt and try and block it, but I don't think that's going to be worth the effort. I just don't think I can do it. So this is one of these quilts. Well, there's several different thoughts on this. You know, if you add new fabric to it, it's no longer a vintage quilt top. Well, it's no longer a vintage quilt top once I machine quilted either. Or even if I hand quilted it now, it would not be a vintage top. And that's not the purpose for me rescuing these vintage tops. I'm trying to keep them out of the landfill and give them a new life and want them to be used. And just leaving this as a top is not going to be used. It's not going to be usable. So I'm going to take it apart, put it together with some new fabric, and see what we come up with. So if you have a quilt top that comes to you from a customer and it is like this, show them what the problem is, because a lot of times they'll come to you and say, I know it's not perfect, but you can quilt that out. And a lot of times you can. I've quilted out a lot of problem quilts and a lot of fullness, but not this much. This is one I'm not going to struggle with. I'm going to remake it and see what I can find to do that with. Okay, I deconstructed this quilt to a point. I took off the borders, and they had 3 borders on it. One was the green background fabric, and then it had the orange and the blue stripe. So I took those off, and this is what I've got now. I've got this on my design wall, and I've pinned it as square as I can without actually measuring it exactly. But you can see it is in a lot better shape now. See up at the top, there's a little bit of fullness in a couple of those alternate blocks. But actually it's not too bad. And then as we go down, you see there's a little bit more of that. So I think I am going to try quilting this as it is at this point and not take it apart any further, and see if I can work with this. And I believe I can. I think this isn't too unreasonable. So mostly down in here will be the toughest part. If I've got this square, which it looks pretty square just by eyeballing it, but you know, I think I can manage this. So I'm going to show you what I did next. I took this quilt top to my quilt shop, my local quilt shop, and the girls there helped me pick out some fabrics for new borders. So I want to show you what I came up with. Now here's the border fabric that I removed, the fabric that matches the background squares. And you can see this is really pretty green, and I didn't think I'd be able to match this. It is faded, and you can tell that by just looking at it in places. Like, it's a little bit faded here as opposed to some other areas, but it's really not in too bad a shape. Here's the back side, and then this is the front side, so you can see how it's faded. And so I wasn't even planning on matching this green. I was going to just do completely different fabric. I was going to go with orange and blue and just try and match the oranges and the blues in this top the best I can, because they're pretty typical orange and blue fabrics that we see today. So I didn't think that would be hard. Actually, it turned out to be harder than matching this green. Now, these grunge fabrics have come out, and look at this. I don't know that I could have done any better matching this. The tone is a little bit off. It's not exactly perfect, but it is just so close that I bought fabric for this. I bought this fabric for one of the borders. Now, I'm not going to use this right up next against the quilt top. I'm going to do an orange strip and then a blue, but this will be the outer border. So I have this fabric, and then I chose this little piece. This will be a narrow border here, and then we have this navy marble-y look, kind of a mottled look, and we're going to do this. This is a Moda fabric. This one I don't know. There's no name on the selvage, so I don't know who made this fabric, and I don't know who did the grunge. Is this the same? Oh, here's some writing on it. Let's see if I can find it. Basic gray. Basic gray grunge. I could not remember who made the grunge fabric. So this is by Basic Gray. So Basic Gray, Moda, and Mystery Fabric. So these are the fabrics I've got. We'll have a narrow 1 or a 2 inch border. I think I only got a yard of this, so we'll see what I can do with that. And then this will be a wider border. And then this will be a 4-inch border. And this will also be the binding. So I'm going to work on putting these borders on and see how it turns out. We'll get it on the machine, and hopefully this will work. I'm really happy I did not have to deconstruct this entire quilt top, and I was able to save most of it. And I'm excited to get started on it. Thanks for watching. For more quilting ideas, click on the video links. And to keep up with my newest projects, click on the subscribe button. I hope to see you again soon.